One of the questions I often get asked is about the last book in the Bible. It's the book of Revelation. So today we are going to ask the question, what is Revelation all about? If you like this video, I hope that you will subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also like us on all of the social media channels. And we would love to invite you to join us for worship. You can find us online or in person at 9 or 10:30 a.m. Hope to see you there. First, I want to start with what the book of Revelation isn't. Lots of us have this idea that the book of Revelation is somehow encoded with some sort of super secret hidden message that if we just get the right set of numbers or read it at the right time of day on the right month, or maybe if we hear some sort of super secret set of glasses that we put on, we can actually unlock the truth of what Revelation is all about. Maybe like Dan Brown's book, that we'll find some super secret treasure hidden under the steps of the Vatican, or maybe that we'll find out when Jesus is going to come back, or maybe some secret about how we can unlock a future of riches and wellness and get the stock market tips right. But Revelation isn't any of that stuff, so it's really important for us to start there. We're not going to find some secret way to decode the book of Revelation. It's full of a lot of strange numbers and a lot of strange imagery, and we don't have time today to go through all of it, but I want you to trust me when I tell you, you're not going to find a way to just unlock this book and all of its secrets. I think it makes for really good fiction. I love the Da Vinci Code, and I love reading some of that stuff. It's great fiction, but it isn't going to help us read Scripture. So what is the book of Revelation? Well, I think we should trust what the book tells us it's doing first. And the author of Revelation is John of Patmos, who is exiled onto this island and has this encounter with God, this vision that God gives him, that then he tells us he writes down in these pages of Revelation. And the book of Revelation tells us that it's a letter, a prophecy, and an apocalypse. So first things first, a letter. The book of Revelation opens with a letter to 7 different churches. And these churches are in real places in the ancient world. And each of them receives a message about exactly what that specific church is going through. But these letters also speak to churches today. They resonate with issues that we have today and that we wrestle with today. So we can learn from the letter that is written to these specific churches, not only those messages at the beginning of the book, but also the wide range of this vision speaks to those churches in their context and also to us today. So number 1, it's a letter. Number 2, it's a prophecy. Now, prophecy gets us back into that secret decoding of the future, because we assume at the very beginning that a prophecy is something that predicts something in the future. But in ancient times and in the Hebrew understanding of prophecy, a prophet's job was to call the people back to faithfulness with God. I'll say that one more time. A prophet's job is not to predict the future, but to call the people back to faithfulness with God. And so the prophet would use a really specific set of tools. They would hear God's voice and have an encounter with God, giving them some vision of a glorious future, a vision of God's dream for the world. But they would also call to account the powers that be that are ignoring God's commandments and ignoring who Jesus calls the least of these, the people on the margins, ignoring the needs of the community. And so the prophet, in kind of a double-edged sword, would really indict and challenge the people for forgetting to take care of those in their midst who need a little bit of extra help, who might be on the margins of society. And at the same time, envisioning some future where God has this dream of wholeness and promise for all of creation. So, Revelation is a letter, and it's a prophecy. But third, Revelation is an apocalypse. And again, we have to uncover what this ancient word apocalypse really means. In fact, the title of Revelation is the Apocalypse of John, and it points to a really specific type of literature that occurs in the Bible. Apocalyptic literature. It's rare. It's not like it's dripping all over every page of the Bible, but it is definitely there. The book of Daniel is another example of apocalyptic literature that uses imagery that is so wild and out of our ordinary imagination that it's somehow hard to even contain it, even to dream about how John is showing about this. You know, you'll see beasts with 12 eyes and 7 horns and crowns with multi-layers on it. All of this stuff is very, very strange for us to imagine, but it's key to this very specific kind of apocalyptic literature. We know this apocalyptic literature pretty well today even. Movie or TV shows like The Walking Dead, or movies like The Hunger Games, or books like Scythe, one of my favorite apocalyptic books, envision the end of the world, or maybe the end of civilization as we know it. But they also have this really great way of critiquing how our world operates. So the best sci-fi, fantasy, or apocalyptic literature might show of a world that's totally ended and in destruction. But it's also going to show and maybe even reveal something about the world that we live in now. And that is how we get to that final statement of apocalypse. An apocalypse is about a revealing of something that we are deeply aware of, but somehow don't see. And so we need to kind of be awoken to it. We need to wake up to this reality that there are challenges in our midst that we don't know about, that maybe we participate in complicitly or not even totally fully aware of. And the book of Revelation really does that. So, in total, Revelation is not something we decode. It's a letter, a prophecy, and an apocalypse. And I hope that you aren't too scared to stay up late at night and read this last book of the Bible. And if you're going to start somewhere, I'm going to encourage you to start at the end. The end of the book really helps us read ultimately what this book is all about. And in the very second to last chapter of Revelation, Revelation chapter 21, the new Jerusalem comes down from heaven. It's God's throne room descending from heaven to be among us. God's vision of peace and wonder and worship and wholeness coming down to reside in our neighborhood. And out of the throne room comes these words, "And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. There will be neither mourning nor crying nor pain, for the former things have passed away." God's vision is of love. God's vision is of life. God's vision is of resurrection. And ultimately, this book of Revelation, that is a letter, a prophecy, and apocalypse, is a vision of God's promise to sustain all of creation through impossible challenge, through the challenges that we see today, but that only a revelation and an apocalypse can wake us up to the challenges that we face. But we can trust that God's promise to sustain us and to sustain all that was and all that is and all that will be is for you and it's for me. So I hope you'll take a look, get adventurous, and read this amazing book of Revelation.